Okay, so hi everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today on this beautiful weekend. Globally, we have a global audience today. And my name is Ray. I'm the founder and CEO of SR20 Academy. So currently we are supporting Stanley's case. So we have this project now, Stand4Stanley at Stanford, SSS. So welcome everyone to join us, and feel free to join us on our WeChat, our WhatsApp group, and also the Discord. And and I will have the Discord link to the WeChat. And then everyone can join Discord with Stanley, with Nan, and our volunteer group as well. So thank you so much, everyone. And today our topic is basically focused on admission transparency. Yes, and thank you, everyone. And so this is our agenda today. We have 7 topics here, and I would like to introduce you guys for our guest speakers today. So very honorable guest speakers. So first is Nan, and Nan is Stanley's father, and Nan is currently leading this demanding for college admission transparency and action. And I will say hi to Nan, and can you briefly introduce yourself? Thank you.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Nan. So I usually don't like spotlight, but I guess for the past few weeks, there's some spotlight coming this way, and I feel like maybe we should have this conversation. It's not necessarily a bad thing after all. So I'm primarily known as Stanley's dad now. I think all my other identities are no longer relevant, and I'd like to share everything I know about Stanley's application and the things that are happening now in terms of the organization group formed by all volunteers in terms of how we want to proceed to demand more transparency in college admission. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nan. And we also would love to know more about your progress later. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and secondly is Jody. So Jody is the Stanford program director, and Jody can introduce more about that later. And Jody is also the deputy director at the Cornell ILR school. And Jody, previously, Jody is the undergrad of Stanford Political Science and also Stanford postgraduate program. And welcome, Jody. Can you also briefly introduce yourself? Thank you.
Hello, nice to be here with you all. I'm Jody Anderson Jr. Thank you, Ray, for those nice words. I just really support what's going on here. I think college is an experience that everyone should have, especially if you're qualified. And really looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jody. And Jody is also a legend at Stanford. So yeah, lots of story behind Jody. So that's why I think Jody really has a lot to say here. And the third one is Stella. Stella is like a former Harvard admission officer for undergraduates. And also Stella is currently studying at UPenn. So thank you so much. Welcome, Stella. Yeah, can you also introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I graduated from Harvard Graduate School of Education, and now I'm pursuing a master's at UPenn, and I major in learning sciences and technologies. And now I'm also working with SR20 as an educational consultant.
Yeah, thank you. And the last one is Kathy. Kathy is a very experienced for admission officer work. So Kathy previously worked at University of Wisconsin Madison, and Kathy has 3 years of viewing all these application cases, more than 20,000 application documents more. So Kathy is actually an expert in all this application process. So we'd love to hear more from Kathy. So welcome, Kathy. Can you also introduce yourself?
I'm Kathy. I'm currently a grad student at Stanford GSE. So I used to work in the admissions office at Wisconsin-Madison, where we have 60,000 of applicants coming in every year. So it's really a fast-paced experiences for me. And I'd love to share a little bit more about my experiences working there and some of my thoughts about this system of higher education in general and why we can see this in transparency in higher education admissions nowadays. So yeah, I'm super excited about the discussion today.
Thank you so much, everyone. We are all in this together. We have a really amazing time today from both private school and public schools, and the Nan and the Jody. So let's just dive into the topics directly. Okay. So yeah, because someone may be new about Stanley. So yeah, and also someone is also know a lot about Stanley. So I will just briefly introduce about Stanley's case. So as you can see, like Stanley's story, basically from rejection to success. Stanley has been rejected by like 16 good universities in the US, but also get hired by Google. So it's another success story. And this was firstly reported by ABC News, and later it went viral, right? So I think Nan, you have a lot to say here. So and later it got reported by CBS, by People, by US Today, and also by Business Today. And later it went viral on Twitter as well, X as well, and also commented by Elon Musk. Yeah, so for this part, it's my part to introduce you guys Stanley's case. Maybe like Nan, can you also update us about the current progress of your organization now? Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So after the Stanley story went viral, a lot of people reached out to me, kind of repeating the same thing. A lot of the parents with kids who had the admission disappointment from this year or past few years. There seems to be a recurring thing that a lot of folks are fairly frustrated about the opaqueness of the admission process. Pretty much everybody thought their kids had a pretty good chance of getting into a good school, but the results were certainly disappointing. So we're putting up a group together, all made by volunteers. And so far, as of this morning, 161 people signed up to volunteer, and we're organizing into 10 committees. And tonight, we're gonna have our first weekly meeting with all 10 committees coming together to brainstorm about the next step and the main thing we wanna push on. I think a couple of things worth highlighting here. Number one, we have a committee working on collecting cases similar to this, so we'll have more data to work with. And number two, we have a committee reaching out to colleges, and we wanna have a channel established directly with the colleges, admission officers, to understand how they operate and for them to understand our pain and maybe have a collaborative approach as opposed to a confrontational approach. And thirdly, we're also reaching out to government officials at both federal level and state level. At the federal level, Stanley's case was already presented at a congressional hearing a few weeks ago. And that's also being followed up with a civil rights complaint to the Department of Education. So that's at the federal level. At state level, we're having a few volunteers reaching out to California state assembly members and senators. And so we're going to approach that channel as well and reach out to the higher education committee in the state assembly and see if we can actually get that conversation going with lawmakers as well. Yeah, so those are the channels I'd like to highlight for the moment.
Yeah, thank you so much, Nan, for this amazing update. And yeah, I read a lot of comments on the chat box already. You're a hero, and thanks so much for leading this. Yeah, and yeah, I'm also just now I talked with Stanford Daily, and you know, like Stanford Daily is very pioneering, like, and I also talked with Sam, like the first reporter who report our previous president. So you guys know about the case. So they are very interested in our story, and we can do more with Stanford Daily later. Okay, thank you so much. Yes, that's a great introduction about Stanley. Yeah, and then now let's talk about, let's talk about admission black box of the Ivy League universities here. Yes, you know, like, because we have the admission officers today, let's see first, is there a real black box behind this? Second, what if yes, what is inside? If possible, let's say what we can know more about this black box. Okay, so I may pass this hot potato to Kathy first. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, cool. So before I say anything, I just want to have this disclaimer that I want to clarify that although I have had past experiences in a university admissions office, I'm no longer employed there and associated with any admissions office now. So the opinion I will share today is solely on my own and don't reflect the practices or policies of any institutions, including the one I previously worked for. They are just general observations meant to spark some discussions on the college admissions. Thank you. So just to start with, I think that the curiosity of what's going on in Ivy League University's admissions office has been a hot topic. Like it's gonna be a hot topic like every now and then. But sociologists and scholars has been studying what's going on inside the admissions office, and they actually have a lot of like books on that, like qualitative research, like a scholar actually going inside of one of the Ivy school and observing how the admissions office works, how they reach out to students, and then how they do this admissions process. So one of the book I read and I really like is Creating a Class. So it was written by one of the GSE professor, Mitchell Stevens. It's a really good book. It really opens my mind after reading that. So I would say when we say that there's a black box, it's really that we as outsiders, as the applicants to the university, we don't know what's going on. So we tend to think that it's a black box because we have students and their applicants as the recipe, I would say. And then we put it in the admissions application. And a few months later, we got the results, whether we got in, we got waitlisted, or we got rejected. So we don't know like a lot of things that's going inside. So that's how we see it is as like a black box. But I would say like inside the admissions office, there are definitely certain criteria and certain like matrices and certain procedures to make the decision. It's not like a, machine learning language models that we really don't know, like no one knows what's going on there. I guess the way that we perceive it as a black box is that intransparency and this like the gap in information in what's going on there. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, I also, like Mitchell Stevens, Professor Stevens is actually my advisor back at Stanford. So I also brought up Stanley's case with him and he's very interested. So we are scheduling the call for this follow-up talk. Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, and also like Stella, yeah, because you have so much experience also with Harvard students. So can you also share like what's your observation or your learnings of the Harvard admission process? Thank you.
Yeah, firstly, I would say that I really agree with what Cassie just said. And also she mentioned that the admission office is creating a class. That is actually what the admission officers are doing during their admission process, because they need to select a class. So it is not only based on the individual, like the qualities of those individual applicants, but they would consider like the whole demographic and of the whole class of the year. And as for it is really different if we are from China, like we go through the college entrance exam and we can know if we can get admitted to the university based only on our test scores. But like here in the US, the process is really different. And now I think most of you would know that the admission process for US colleges and universities, they usually use a holistic review of all the admission materials. So it means that it's not only based on test scores, and we know that nowadays a lot of universities have the test scores as optional. So maybe the value of test scores is not the whole thing, but they would also consider other things like extracurricular activities, and also they would examine students' potential contributes to the community of that university. So it means that as an individual, you might not know what are the specific criteria of the college, but like when they are considering applications, they would consider the whole people as an applicant, and all the materials, including their test scores, essays, GPA, and also recommendation letters, and also with like alumni interviews. So they would see if this student would fit into that community, and if this student would not only survive but also thrive in that community. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's very great to hear. And also like Jody, because you are literally you're the Stanford undergrad, and you also went through the undergrad application, also the master's program application. So like to hear also your experience at Stanford, and also maybe your peers, like what do they think of this black box?
No, I definitely agree with the first two answers. One thing I would definitely add is your impact in the community. You have to represent a community that the university is interested in targeting or reaching out to or having an impact in. And so that's going to set you apart from a number of applicants. Everyone's smart. Everyone has, high scores, whether that's an SAT, ACT, et cetera. I think that's just table stakes at this point. It's in what differentiates you from the other candidates. And so I think that's super important. Another thing I would say too, I had actually transferred into Stanford from Cornell. And so that's an even more selective like admissions process. And what they're looking for there is like not only like your list of accomplishments, but then how can you continue those efforts, right, with the resources of the university, or how does your life or what you're doing fit into the overall mission of the university? So you heard a few comments about creating a class, right? And so this is very much a part of that, because I think they understand that when you typically recruit students, most of them are going to have like a similar background, similar experience, et cetera. But if you're trying to expand beyond that, then you have to tap into, let's say, non-traditional populations. And so that's another avenue that they're looking for. And so if you're thinking about like applying to colleges, et cetera, I think you want to take those efforts to make sure that you are differentiated and you're highlighting what makes you unique, the community that you come from, the work you've already done on behalf of that community, and how you plan to further those efforts with the resources or with the connections from the school that you're looking to apply to. So I think that's super important. Another thing too that was mentioned, I think it was Kathy was just saying this, references and recommendations. I think it's all networking. Like the more people you already know at the school is just going to help you. So when I was applying to Cornell, I had already had a number of conversations with the debate program, right? And so that's how I got to know the people there, the staff, administrators, et cetera. And so your name starts circulating amongst the alumni too. And so they're interested in bringing you on board. And those early efforts are before you even apply. So you have to be thinking about what schools I want to go to, make a very like concerted effort to do that. That's just my like general advice. But it does seem like it's an inside job where there's a lot of like nepotism involved. I don't think this is any different from like legacy admissions. Like how many people do you know? Can you advocate for yourself? Can you reach out to people who are already affiliated with the school just to make sure that your name is top of mind? Because people are looking at the application and saying what connections do you have to the university and the network.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jody. Yeah, definitely. Like college application is just not one-time shot. It's like a long-term prepping, right? So you need to like do all this networking as early as possible, all this research projects, essays, even your recommenders, right? Why do they want to recommend you? You need to do much more just before the college preparation and application. Yes. And then because you have working together with so many parents, right? I would like to know like what are the concerns that parents are want to know about this black box?
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to clarify that I don't think anybody has any problem with holistic review. Yes. In fact, I think it's the right thing to do. Test scores, particularly standardized test scores, is only a very small part of a student's profile. In my opinion, it's far more important for them to show their actual problem-solving skills, their creativity, and their even more importantly, their responsibility to the community around them. And none of that can be reflected in the test score. So I don't think anybody here is arguing for we should go back to standardized test score and not have holistic review. On the flip side, I think people are also very clear that holistic reviews should not be construed as black box review. I think those are two independent dimensions. You can have a holistic review that's not opaque, that has actually accountability and transparency baked into it. So that's point number one I want to make. And point number two is that I think people are also generally aligned with one of the principles we laid out, is that here we are looking at the system as a whole. We're not doing any blaming game. We're not saying, hey, here's one person that's screwing up, or this one person is the problem. I think that kind of a blaming game on the individual is not going to be helpful, and it's probably also not fair for folks who are working really so hard, working through so many applications to find as I understand it, to build the right class. I think there are good intentions on both sides. In every party involved, students, parents, colleges, government, and experts in education and legal. I don't think we are fundamentally misaligned. Everybody wants to have a good education system where the students can flourish. And the question is, can we make people more confident about this process by introducing transparency?
Yeah, lovely. Yeah, I thank you so much for differentiating the black box and the holistic review. Yeah, that's a good point there. Yeah, and then secondly, yes, because we know this is holistic review, right? But how do admission officers really do fair play here? So then, based on these questions and the background of our guest speakers today, so maybe like Stella, do you like from your experience, like how did Harvard or UPenn would do this fair play?
Yeah, thank you, Ray. I think most of you have heard of the Harvard case. And so the Supreme Court struck down race-conscious admission programs at Harvard and the University of North Carolina. And this decision concludes a 9-year effort by Harvard to defend policies that include race as one factor among many in admissions decisions. And this decision means that when Harvard is considering the applications, they cannot consider based on their race or ethnicity. But if the students bring that up in their essays or in their interviews, they can show their personal characteristics through experiences with, for example, battling with discrimination or overcoming adversity, that kind of things that can be considered. But the race and ethnicity itself cannot be a consideration during the admission process. And from my own observation, I think here at UPenn, because now I am a student in GSE, and I would say that there are a lot of like Chinese students here, and especially in programs such as TESOL programs. So I think when Penn GSE recruits graduate students, they do not based on their race or ethnicity.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, and then Cassie, can you also somehow add more details from your side?
Yeah, so build upon Stella's observation, I would say that for recruiting efforts, the way that people like schools report their diversity or like the race is totally just based on US demographic. It's based on US citizens. So it doesn't actually include like race or ethnicity for international students. So even though they recruit like a tons of international students from Asia or from like Africa, it doesn't actually do good in their like stats in the diversity so-called to report in Department of Education or whatever. So that's something I want to point out. And another thing that I cannot share too much about like how admissions like do the fair pay. play, but I guess one thing that for application reviews, they need at least 2 admissions counselors and readers for one application. So that's a way to kind of reconcile this maybe bias that could be introduced from a single reader, because of the readers' backgrounds, their education, and the culture that they are immersed with. The readers might have different reactions to the language that students submit. For example, if one student who don't have a lot of experiences in summer camp or go to summer school or whatever, but they have to dedicate their time as a caregiver to their family. Is that an indication of their resilience or their quality, their characteristics? Different people from different backgrounds might have different reaction on that. So having at least two applicants on one single application profile can have this kind of inter-rater agreement sort of thing that we can observe to try to be more fair in the assessment of an application.
Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, Kathy. Yes. And yeah, we got a really good question from Jesse from our audience. So he's asking for those non-admitted students, they want to know why the rejections, if possible. For example, yeah, I'm sorry, now I have to put Stanley's case here. What do you guys think? Why Stanley got rejected by 16 universities, all these universities together? What is behind this? What would be the possible reasons there, you guys think? So before that, maybe I would like to ask question from Nan, so because I haven't read Stanley's application essays or personal statement, so is it possible that you can share some of the highlights in this essays? Then I think because the essays really weigh a lot there, right? Then Kathy and Stella could give more feedback on that.
Sure, yeah, I'll be happy to share that. In fact, I put up a summary of Stanley's application. I'll put that in the chat for anybody who's interested to check out. In summary, I think the essay part is an interesting question. Stanley, for privacy reasons, doesn't want to not release it as is, but I can share a couple of data points. Number one, he did show it in person before the ABC7 interview. So if you watch one of the ABC7 interviews, the news anchor did read his essay before the program began. And she mentioned that she saw no red flag in the essay. Yes. And of course, I saw his essay as well. Just around his application time, I certainly cannot see any red flag in it. In fact, I think it's a fairly interesting essay because he's talking about how to counter corporate greed with a new approach. And I think that's a very interesting angle from a young person. If somebody who really wants to know what the essay actually feels and may read look like, you can watch his interview with Viewpoint. Essentially, the essay is text copy of that video interview. So he talked about why he started RapidSign, the reason why he did it during the COVID pandemic, and what he's trying to achieve with it, and how he aims to help lower healthcare costs with this approach by offering free HIPAA e-signing, and finally, why his company requires every shareholder to contribute 50% of their capital gain towards social good. In term, he named Activism Corporation. So those are all mentioned in the video. It's only 3 minutes, so if you watch it, you get a very good sense of what the essay is about.
Yeah, thank you so much for your sharing. Yeah, I strongly encourage everyone. Yeah, just go to the Google Doc and you can get a much more thorough understanding of Stanley's case and the current progress. Yeah, that's very cool. Yeah, and yes, just now we talked about the fair play there, and yes, why Stanley got rejected, and we would like to know more about like unspoken secrets here or unspoken criteria here. Because Jody, I'm a really like close friend with Jody, and I know like Jody, you used to apply for Harvard, right? And can you also share like some of your Harvard application journey and your feelings there? Thanks.
Yeah, I remember when I was applying for a number of schools. And mind you, I was a transfer student, so there were some schools like Princeton had just opened up their like transfer application process. So this is for people who aren't coming straight out of high school. Like maybe they've gone to the military, maybe they've gone into the workforce, maybe they've had other experiences. I think Kathy was alluding to this too, caring for their family. Some other life event happened that interrupted their, I guess, transition into academia immediately after high school. And so it's a very like limited pool. And so there are schools that don't even allow transfer students. There are some schools that do. And so the year I applied, a number of schools were just like opening this up for the first time. So it was a pretty big deal. And I remember submitting my application to Harvard. And one of the questions that they have is they're asking you like how committed you are to the university, right? Like why Harvard? And then if you don't get into Harvard, then what are you going to do, right? And I think there's this like loyalty question. It's very bizarre to me, but I remember answering like, no matter if I get into Harvard or not, I'm going to like accomplish like what I set out to do in life, et cetera, like my mission. And definitely got rejected. But I think the way I had approached it was a bit combative, right? But then eventually got into like Cornell and Stanford. One thing about this like this unspoken criteria part is just there's I think you have to take into account the geopolitics like of the times. So when you think about like the US's stance against like China in general, right? Or like Asia in general, right? There's like these like proxy like economic wars, trade wars, etc. And so like all this is fueling the minds of people who are involved in like this process, right? And I think that's definitely unspoken. Even if people won't admit it, like that is a part of the conversation, for sure. Even you think about events that happen in the US, let's say if we bring it back to race, the explosion of like racial tensions during like the pandemic, et cetera, that is in people's minds. And you see corporations and dedicating entire funds to support certain movements and not only just like corporations, but then universities also responding in a way. And so that's definitely going to affect who's admitted, who's not admitted. So I think although that is largely out of the individual applicant's control, I think that's also part of the equation that goes into these decisions.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. Yeah, I know like lots of universities, because they are concerned about their ranking, right? Then they will do lots of about the yield rate. For example, for the yield rate, if they got give out offers for 100 students and only let's say 80 students accepted the offer, then their yield rate would be look different if only like 50% students accept offer, right? So that would be much affect their ranking scores. So definitely the universities, they want to really select those students who show their loyalty and also their commitment to the universities. This is some like new story to me that, for example, like yesterday we have another guest speaker, Jackie. He's a freshman at Stanford. So he shared one of his friends used to do programs with UPenn for the summer program. But that friend was very conservative. He applied for the EA of Cornell, but he got rejected. Somehow he shared that his friend regrets that he should apply for UPenn, even though that is very competitive, but the loyalty is there because the summer program is there. Yeah, I'm not sure if this is true. And then I would like to hear from Kathy or Stella, if you guys need to add any details here or any stories or anything there. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's definitely true, especially for elite universities, because from the book I read, I think it's another book, I couldn't remember the name, that talks about recruiting strategies for Ivy schools. because Ivies, they are most likely to compete with the other Ivy institutions. So they are really doing a lot in their recruiting process. And one of the ways that they do that is to secure those students as soon as possible. And that's why we see this early action EA, where you are mostly have this bonded commitment to the school once you get admitted, and you can only apply to one before November-ish for the early action, early decision, I guess. I couldn't remember that terminology, but the one that is bounded, you will see that mostly applicable for those Ivy or highly selective schools, because that's the game they're playing to try to secure students, good students, as soon as possible, so they have more certainty in how many students they're gonna come, and that will direct the strategy for the following rounds of application, the regular decision, because universities are really gonna plan out how many students they're gonna admit for today for this year, what's their capacity, and if there are a lot of variance in how many students they are gonna enroll in the school, it will cause some problems. Like if you admitted fewer students than you plan, there are fewer students basically enroll in the university than you plan, you might have loss in your tuition income. You might have people departments that don't have any new students this year. Or if you admitted more students, having more students than your capacity is, then you probably will end up in the stage where there's 200 people in a small classroom, or fresh students are not gonna get enough dorms, something like that. So it's a really serious thing that admissions office will collaborate with the departments, the leadership in the university every year to plan out their admission strategy. So yeah, I think that I really appreciate that Ray talks about the yield rate and the acceptance rate. So for me, I feel like the acceptance rate is the problem, because people are obsessed with institutions have the lowest acceptance rates, and because that's what makes universities climb up the US News ranking. So for example, university have this number about say 60,000 applicants, and the more that they reject it, the lower their acceptance rate is, and the higher their ranking is. And the yield rate is really solely on the admission, the enrollment management side, because people don't really talk about yield rates. It's only people who work in admissions will talk about yield rate, because that really depends on how well they do they get the correct number of students to come for the next year. And for those in the university, they got a lot of efforts to do the recruitment for their admitted students. They invite students to come to the campus for a visit. Like Stanford, they have their admits weekend. They have students come over and stay in the dorm for a weekend. So that's a lot of efforts and resources that's gonna delegate into that. So we really want to make sure that they have a more certain cohort of students, that they won't wasting the time and energy for those who won't actually commit it here. So I guess that's two sides of the numbers they will be looking at from the admissions side.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, we do have a question from the audience that when you admission officers, when you read all these applicants' essays, do you know their names?
I think those names, well, it's sometimes some of the identifiable information will be removed, but sometimes some of the identifiable things are visible. So it really depends on where like in which like process that application is being viewed.
Got you. So it depends, right? Okay. Yeah. We also got a question like, what about university admission in other countries like Japan, Germany, or Turkey? Are they transparent?
I think that for systems that are more like score oriented, they have like transparency in that.
Okay.
So it's just like completely different like ways of evaluation and systems.
Got you. Okay. Okay. Go ahead, Nan. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really glad the topic of yield rate or yield protection came up, because that's one of the hottest debate topics in our meetings and when the volunteers exchange information. So to the extent the former admission officers are able to disclose, and to the extent you're comfortable with, is there such a thing? Because people are speculating whether that exists as an urban legend, or it's actually something that the colleges do optimize.
I guess that like different universities have like completely different yield rate. So you can basically calculate that from any institutions that disclose their admissions data in the common data set. It's just like up on the internet. You can easily look it up. So you can easily calculate the yield rate for Harvard, Stanford, or Wisconsin-Madison. So for example, I just look it up that the yield rate for Stanford out of my calculation is like 85%, and same as Harvard. And for University of Wisconsin-Madison, it's about 30% of the yield rate, meaning that only 30% of students who hold the offers from Madison will actually commit and enroll. So
what about that,
yeah.
the yield rate itself? I think the interest is more on yield protection as a practice. Is that practice real?
I cannot sure about that. I don't know about.
Okay, all right, that's fine. Yeah, that's why I'm asking. Yeah, to the degree with, because there's a lot of speculation about that, and that's exactly is the question on the screen right now. Is there such a thing that colleges would reject "quote unquote" overqualified applicants?
Yeah, I think before that, let's define what is overqualified students. Yeah, and then
I don't even know if anybody would have a definitive answer to that. But yeah, that's a good question.
Yes, maybe I think, for example, in my personal experience, for example, like why Jody got chosen by Stanford instead of Harvard. Do they think, Jody, do they think you are overqualified?
I think I made it very clear that I had options, and that I was looking at other schools. And then when you look at all of my references, they all came from Stanford and Cornell. So then you take that into consideration. It's like the odds of this person even coming here, and then in the application is displaying the options that they have in the references, so connected to other schools. Like it probably isn't a good idea. That is my presumption based on like my conversations after the fact. But I think overqualified is definitely, you have unlimited options, right?
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Jody, if you don't mind, can I ask you a follow-up question?
Sure.
Yeah, regarding the situation you just described. So in that case, wouldn't Harvard still, if they don't have the practice of yield protection, would it still make sense for them to pursue an excellent candidate, even though they may perceive this as a low chance?
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you. Like I think common sense would be like, okay, let's be competitive. Let's try to go after this candidate. But that just
Harvard should have the confidence, right? If Harvard does not have that confidence, I don't know who will.
I'm totally with you. I'm totally with you. It is a very bizarre game. But I think just real quick, I keep saying this word, like legacy admissions, nepotism, connections, the network. I think that is such a big part of this equation that people just don't speak about. Yeah, I think it just goes overlooked.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah. Yeah, and like, because for this overqualified, there are so many good universities, and they are fighting for good students, right? For example, if I'm a Cornell admission officer, I see, oh, this Stanley could definitely be admitted by Harvard, Stanford, then I may see Stanley as overqualified. Do you think this is true, like Stella? Because because Stella has much experience also for the interviews. Like there are only around 10% of students who would get this interview opportunities. So Stella, do you think when you are doing the interviews with the students, how would you see if these students are overqualified or not?
Yeah, I think for Harvard, there won't be something as overqualified. And also for like the interviews, there are rates. So I don't think there is a rate for overqualified, but basically there are rates like if they are potentially to contribute to the community, or if there's rate about like their overall impression, but there's no such choice as overqualified. And also speaking of overqualification, I don't have a clear definition of that, but sometimes when students think they are rejected because of overqualification, there might be actually some other reasons. For example, like we just talked about the yield protection, but maybe it seems that the student isn't a good fit for the school, like even if they have like good profiles. But like, for example, if the school would like students who are interested in multiple subjects, not in a single subject, but the students demonstrate that he or she is only interested in a single field, so they might be rejected. Or like for Harvard, as we can see that a lot of students' intended major is like humanities. So for example, there might also be like the choice of major might also influence the admission decisions. So I think for students, they really need to like do research on the universities, and also try to explore their own interest and demonstrate their interest in their application materials. So like even if they are overqualified, but if you show that you are passionate about the school, and like if that you would go to that school if you're admitted, then overqualification might not be a problem, but I'm not 100% sure about that.
Well, thank you so much for sharing. Yes, we are talking about overqualified, and we got a really good question from the audience. Like, what are those definitions of qualified? Like for you, like admission officers, like how do you evaluate applicants as qualified students, as qualified candidates? Because you are creating a class, right? So what are the red flags? Because Stanley, there's no red flags, but like people, their opinions are very subjective. So the admission officers, they may see in Stanley's case like as red flags somewhere, right? So what are the red flags here? Like for example, I know like Jody, you mentioned your application journey for Harvard, that you have other options, not just Harvard. That might be a red flag. So I would like to hear more from Stella and Kathy. Like, what do you think you would definitely not consider this person, or you would consider more of other people's candidates because of they have other metrics or they have other qualities? Thank you so much. Yeah, I may start with Kathy this time. Thank you.
Right. So I guess the way that we see like red flags, even though an applicant that with no like serious red flags like coming out of their applications, there are still a good chance that they're gonna get rejected. We've seen a tons of it. Like every year after the admissions office release applications, there are angry parents calling to the admissions office, just asking why their kid got rejected. They got perfect GPA, they got all this kind of curriculums, they got all these activities, and they got rejected. Yes, there's still good chance. I would say like for the red flags, if you say something about like being racism or like discriminating others, or showing something that you have this potential to like hurt others or like hurting yourself, that is something that will just like being alarming in the admissions officer's mind, and they might escalate that case to the leadership. So I've seen students who were reported after they got admitted because they shared something on social media about like something racism on the social media that got reported to the university, and we are very serious about that. So we will look into that, and we will make a decision whether it's to some extent we might revoke the admissions, but it's really, really rare. Unless like you're really hitting those like red flags. So yeah, I would say that's something that's like the real red flags. Other than that, I cannot think of anything that's like super serious besides those.
Yeah, thank you. How about Stella? Do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, I agree with what Cassie just said. Of course, offensive social media posts would be a definite red flag. And also thinking about like other application materials, for example, the recommendation letter, like if someone gets a recommendation letter from someone really prestigious, but it appears that the person doesn't really know the student, then that recommendation letter would be like meaningless. And also thinking about interviews, one main goal of the interview is to examine the student like in person, like if the student is consistent with all his or her application materials, like would all the essays seems to be written by the same person, and does the student like demonstrate like similar skills and interests and characteristics in the interview align with their application materials? These are things to consider. Yeah, and also try to avoid maybe things like ignorance of privilege or insincere volunteering. For example, like we know that a lot of students would do volunteering work just for their resume, but they are not sincerely doing that, or they are actually acting at a high position or looking down on those people that he or she is working with. These kind of things would be some kind of red flag.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, and we do have lots of good questions from the audience, which just align with our current questions. You know, like the common data sets has no data from the non-admitted students. And Cassie just mentioned their angry parents. They phone called you guys like, why my kids got all this perfect profile but got rejected. So do you think it is possible that we have this feedback mechanisms for the parents to know why their kids got rejected? Do you think is it possible for the admission officer office to establish this feedback mechanism? I would throw this question to Kathy.
Yeah, my first impression is no. Just purely because the amount of work, and then the fact that there are just so many qualified students available for those elite institutions that they, in some sense, have to turn down the offer to a lot of very qualified and very well-deserved students. And think about that. If there's literally nothing you can really say about their thing, the best thing that you can say to them is that rejecting from our school doesn't deny you as a person, doesn't deny your ability. I guess that's what this schools has been doing. And I do think that there are definitely need more transparency, but I think that having like feedback mechanism for every student is not doable.
Okay, yeah, thank you so much. And Jody, please go ahead.
Yeah, I just have a few thoughts before we close out. I definitely want to say thanks, Nan, for leading the charge on this. Seriously, I wonder what is the odds of Stanley applying next year to all the schools again? The reason I say that because he now represents an entire like community of students who are qualified, who deserve a chance and are being locked out of opportunity for reasons that are unknown to everybody. And so I think it would be very ironic if the same thing happened again like next year. Like, there's nothing precluding him from doing it again, even if he's still at Google, just to kind of set that precedence, because they're going to have a response since it's so high profile. And the notion about, rejecting a ton of students who deserve a chance and that's just a part of the process, I just fundamentally disagree with that. So when I was at Stanford, like Steve Jobs' daughter was my classmate, Bill Gates' daughter was my classmate, Russell Wilson's sister was my classmate. And so like these people are like high profile, famous people, like in their end. So the universities didn't reject them. Obama's daughter was at Harvard with like my girlfriend. Like, so they're in these schools, right? So I think it's a bit more than just merit, like if we're being honest about it. And I think now Stanley has a huge profile and a huge community behind him that's international. And so I think we definitely have a chance to make a statement here. It's going to open up the doors and the conversation for other students who really deserve that chance and weren't able to get that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jody. Yeah, and I'm curious, like, because let's just jump to the last question. Like, Nan, you have working so long for introducing this third party. I'm curious, like, what's your current thoughts on this? Yeah, Nan, can you hear us?
Oh, sorry. Well, so this is one of the ideas we floated around. Of course, it's early stage, maybe it won't fly, but at least I think it is in the direction of us actually working together using our collective brain power to solve the problem as opposed to do finger pointing. And one of the ideas here is that if you think about the importance of college admission, and in some ways, if you also relate that to public companies' financial records on a quarterly basis, they all have an auditor. So basically, the market's not going to trust the company to say how well their results are. They need somebody independent to validate and provide that assurance. Hey, the integrity is there, and we can vouch for their process. I think that is what's missing here. And one way to plug that deficiency is to introduce an independent third party that is not working for the parents, that it's not hired by the school. Therefore, they exercise their independence and exercise their own judgment in terms of their observation of the application process. And if that's too nuanced to do it for every student, which is a valid concern, we can do it on a random subset of students of their application and their college results. So I think this goes back to one of the principles we've highlighted in our call it a movement or not, is that in a democracy, every power needs to have checks and balances. And in the current state, I believe, based on what I know, I think the college admission process is without sufficient checks and balances. And typically, people tend to get suspicious and naturally questioning the process if there's not enough transparency. And on top of that, I'm not saying any individual is doing the bad thing here, but we also have to realize that the admission office doesn't have a clean track record in this regard in terms of integrity. The federal investigation of Varsity Blues a few years ago did reveal criminal acts by people involved in admission, taking bribes and admitting students are not qualified. So I think the people like me, a lot of people like me, are already questioning the process if we don't have there's bad precedents already, and if we still don't consider transparency to introduce in check and balances, that naturally increases people's doubt and lack of confidence.
Yeah, thank you so much. I just noticed Jody said, and then good point. Yes, I fully agree with that. Yeah, and I'm curious, like, because Kathy, just now you mentioned like this feedback mechanism is totally undoable because of what? I would like to know more details. I know the workload, but since now AI is so popular, do you think we can borrow the power of AI to do like personalized feedback to each parent? Do you think that would be a possible resolution, or it would just exaggerate or even like make them more angry about the results?
Yeah, that's a super interesting point. So I was like thinking about this scenario. Because, for example, say, I definitely totally agree with Nam that we definitely need more like transparency, because higher education, if you think about it as a service provider and thinking about family and student as the customer to the services, it is by far, I guess, one of the industry that have very asymmetric like information between the provider, the service provider, and the customer. So having this third party or other mechanisms to really provide those information more transparency to students and family and the whole public, I think that's a really good thing to start off. So I guess in terms of giving feedback, so say for now, selective institutions, they typically just don't expand their spots to more students, even though there are people who demanding this higher education, like good quality education, but they never, like seldom like expand the supply in order to meet the demand. I think one of it is because that they wanted to sustain this kind of prestige, you know. Yep. So like institution will seldomly like actually expand to that. So in that case, assuming that we all in this like fair ground, we have like, for example, remove those like underqualified students that don't deserve their, but solely because they bribe someone. Like we like got rid of all this, but there's still about 2,000 spots at Stanford. And there are definitely much more qualified students for Stanford than that 2,000 spots. So mathematically, like we have to like reduce the number of students we need to admit it. So what do we want to say to those students? Do we want to give the feedback to the students that, okay, we got this fair matrices for every student and you are just slightly like less qualified for the others? Do you think that would be someone we want our kids to hear about? We don't want them to know, like understand, okay, this is a fair game. We have like quantified everything, that every matrix is to like measure every aspect as a student, and mathematically and like numberly, you are just slightly like less than the people who are admitted. I don't think that it's the one that I want to tell the students. That's not the world that we want to live in, to really quantify everything. So I guess for students, it's good to have feedback, but I'll be cautious if those feedback would pose more pressure on them, making them feel that they are just inferior than the other person who got admitted. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, totally. That's really a good point. You know, like that is like, what are the consequences of if we add a third party, or if we have this feedback mechanisms? What would be are we going to hurt our kids, our applicants again? Would that be even worse? Yeah, that's really a good point to consider. Yes. How about Stella? Do you have anything to add here?
Yeah, so for the feedback mechanism, I thought of something like, because like giving every applicant a specific reason of rejection is like definitely undoable, but like would it be useful to introduce something like just a category of the rejection? I'm thinking about, but like I'm not sure about that. And also like if universities and colleges introduce feedback mechanism, would it? I also have this concern that would it make students and parents more like unsatisfied about the decision, and like there would be more like arguments. Yeah, so I'm not sure about the feedback mechanism. And also as for third party, of course, like including a third party would increase transparency and fairness, and we also have the concern about the cost, and also the colleges and university would think that their independency of admissions might be influenced by the third parties. And I think Bill in the chat box, I think his idea is worth considering, and because like if there's no laws or regulations demanding a third party, they would definitely not do so. But besides adding a third party, would it be possible that the government make some regulations that demand colleges and universities themselves to increase their transparency in the admission process? And maybe something they can start with is to increase the data availability. I think Jody and someone also talked about that. So would it be possible to add those data, like apart from student file, apart from the admitted students, demographics, would it be possible to provide racial and ethnic demographic data or other kinds of data for all the applicants, and not just the students who are admitted or enrolled?
Yeah, that's a really good point, Stella. Thanks for sharing. Yes, you know, our conversation just reminds me of another movie that is on the basis of sex. It's about the story of Jody, you just smiled. Yeah, you must be familiar with the movie. Yeah. So it's like Ginsburg, he wants to help women to get equal rights, right? But it's not the first step that he's going to revolutionize the whole system. So what is the first step for us today, right? So because now you mentioned we want to do this third party to really demand for that, because universities has no incentive to do that, right? That's a super difficult and challenge there. So what would be the first easiest step for us to do? I think Stella, you just bring a really amazing point. Ask them for more data sets, for more transparency. That would be maybe like more visible. And I would like to hear from Nan, like, what do you think and the team think that would be the most easiest step first to start with?
I'm with Stella. I think the more data definitely would help.
Yeah.
And this is where things are getting a little bit sticky. In fact, at 4 p.m. in less than an hour, I'm going to have a call with Professor Richard Sander at UCLA. He's a law professor at UCLA. He filed a lawsuit in 2018 demanding release of some data from the UC system. And so far, the UC has not released the data. He's not accusing anybody of doing anything wrong. He just wants to get the data for his research. And even that has been an uphill battle for him just to get the data. I think that's where it makes me wonder, why is the university not willing to open up the share or release that data? Even the professor actually offered to pay for the work needed to get the data released, to scrub it, to remove any personally identifiable information. So I'm really curious, what is the reasoning and the thinking behind the university decision not to release that data?
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, you know, like as for SR20 Academy, because currently I'm also, because our long-term goal is to do this AI counselor, we can help parents to really make personalized plans. And now we are trying to collect data to train this bot. And we are currently working together with all different alumni from different universities to share their data, that how they got successfully admitted by their universities. So we are trying to reverse engineer that, what makes it work, right? So that might be the
best part is it's about they can make a standard with the admission bot, because the admission officer is going to have their bot. So the bot is it's essentially a bot battle against bot.
Yeah. Then we need a strong engineer team here. Yeah. And I know, like personally, like Kathy, you also mentioned you want to do this idea to support and also help the admission officer. Is it possible that you can share some of your ideas here?
Yeah, I think before I was talking to admissions officer around how ChatGPT can change the admissions landscape, and it's definitely a new ground that even people who are in the admissions office are trying to navigate. And for him, he actually thinks that having a ChatGPT as an aid for students, especially those who don't have these resources to access to an expensive private consultant, it will be a huge like benefit for them. It's a way to like promoting the access to those information for students. So I definitely hear the positive side, even from the admissions office, for this AI. Another thing was about like the data sharing. I think one thing I'll be curious is who are reading those applicants and who are serving in the admissions boards for those institutions. Are there enough diversity in race, background, social income, in the like applicants, readers, and admissions board, in order to get a more like just assessment for applicants? Because if you're imagining people coming from like different cultural backgrounds, they might react differently to the school. To the students, this like unconscious bias is dangerous in the admissions process. So we don't really know that who are the people that are reading the application file. Are they all like being, you know, in the prestige status than those who don't? We don't know about that. So adding on like the data collection side, that's one part that I'm really interested in seeing.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Kathy. Yeah, and we have been collecting the questions from our audience, giving to our intense time today. So that would be our first talk about about Stanley's case. And we, like Jody just mentioned, we totally stand for Stanley, and like we would also like to be keep posted on then your progress, like what you would need from like Jody's support or our support, that we would totally be there, share our insights, share our experiences, and let's see how we can unlock this black box and introduce more admission transparency. Yes, that would be definitely our first panel talk today. And I would definitely reach out, talk with Professor Mitchell Stevens. Like our audience just mentioned, is it valuable to do this 4-year degree? Or like everyone, we just do like Stanley, graduate from high school, train our, just hone our industrial skills really amazing, and just got hired directly by Google or other high-tech companies. Why not? Right? So that would be more fun and more interesting to talk about that on our second panel talk. Yes. And I would like to thank you everyone like for today's sharing, and also Nan. Yeah, and I know you are super busy, and thank you so much for your valuable time, and Stella, Kathy, and Jody, and all of our audience today. Yes, and later, like at 6 p.m. Pacific time, we will have another like talk on just from the teacher and also Dr. Bolger's perspective, how he could explain this topic better from the Harvard side, because he's also the faculty at Harvard, and he also helped students get into all these good universities, and he gets lots of data. He has been doing this like 23 years. Maybe we also get some insights from his part. Yes. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone, today. And we will definitely continue this talk. And its first one is not the last one. And we definitely want to get to know what we can do. For example, how can we do the first step, data transparency from the admission officer, or the bot between the bot fights. Yes. And everything. Yeah, I'm totally looking forward to that. Yes. Thank you so much, panel speakers. Do you guys have anything to share or add? Okay.
Yeah, I'll share a sign-up link for anybody who's interested in volunteer, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead. So you are interested in who wants to be the volunteers, right? Nan?
Yeah, if anybody's interested in joining the volunteer team, join one of the 10 committees we're forming, I can put this slide here in the chat.
Yeah.
And it's only 1 minute to sign up as a volunteer.
Yes, totally.
Okay, I put it in the chat. Thank you.
Sure. Thanks. And I also put the Discord here, and people, like everyone, feel free to join Nan's Discord, and we can just share more of our questions, insights, doubts, speculations, even just in the Discord. Yeah, we can totally follow up with everything there. Okay.
Thanks for putting it together.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. We're all in this together, and let's just stand for Stanley and do something for our next generations. Thank you.
Yeah, let's start a conversation. Let's build some connections with the schools and across all the groups.
Yes, yes. Yeah, we will work together. I will, yes, like I mentioned, like Stanford-Stanley and Stanford professors, I will continue my effort here. And I know like Jody, you would be definitely, and Stella, Kathy, you're my strong support. Yeah. Let's do it.
And not too. If we also want to build up some like coalitions at Cornell too, like we could definitely do that there too, like host one of these, but with that community, just to give them more visibility on what's going on. Because I think you definitely got Stanford, like the students behind this. It'd be nice to go to all.
Okay, can I reach out to you? Can you leave your contact information?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Yeah, let's do another group for Stand4Stanley at Cornell, right? Let's just spread.
I got it. Thank you. Thank you, Jody.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Jody. Yeah, and we could also definitely reach out to other Ivy League and let's just spread this. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Okay.
It's great talking to you all. I'm so honored to be in this discussion. It's great. I think we can definitely do more about that. Hope to talk to you all soon.
Yeah, appreciate Kathy. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. That was a great conversation. And like, even if we don't know what's the exact reason that Stanley got rejected, but it is definitely worthwhile to like increase transparency in the admission process.
Yes, definitely. Because I also mentioned this too. Lots of, like Stanford professors and even the admission officers. Yeah, we will definitely continue the discussion and I will keep you guys posted.
Yeah, also thanks for sharing. I learned a lot today. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a nice weekend. Yeah. Okay.
Bye.
Thank you so much, Nan. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.